and welcome to the second season of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and if you're brand new to the old Frame and Reference, this is a cinematography-based podcast. For the first season, I was only speaking to cinematographers, but now going into season 2, I've decided to widen the landscape a little bit and speak to, production designers, directors, colorists, other people who have influence on the overall look of the film. This will still be a cinematography-focused podcast, so when I talk to those people, we will be talking about, how they interacted with the cinematographers, what those relationships looked like, how their jobs intertwine and stuff like that. But we will be talking to more than just cinematographers because I think a wider scope is prudent, especially, when a podcast gets going and is successful. You need to widen the scope a little bit, throw out a wider net. But today, to kick off season 2, we are talking to Boris Mojsovski. He is the DP of Titans on HBO Max, the DC superhero show, and Lost Symbol on Peacock, the Dan Brown show, or based on Dan Brown's books rather. But Boris is awesome. This is one of my favorite talks. I feel like I say that every episode. This is one of my favorite talks I've ever had, but they just keep getting better. We're a little philosophical, which is always awesome. And towards the end, when we really start talking about the shows, quite practical. So you get the best of both worlds in that case. Boris is an ASC and CSC member, by the way. I should throw some respect on his name. I didn't earlier on. And yeah, going forward with Frame and Reference this season, I think we're going to have an amazing time. So if you're new, welcome. And if you are a longtime listener, thanks for coming back. So yeah, let's kick off season 2 with this discussion with Boris Mojsovski, ASC, CSC. Well, so the way that I like to get started with any of these, just to introduce the audience, is just asking, how did you get started in cinematography? Like, what was your, not your career path, but what got you interested in images? I know you kind of uniquely had a sort of a lineage of image makers in your family.
Well, my dad was a cinematographer, director as well. And I spent a lot of time on film sets. And it's funny when you spend a lot of time on film sets as a kid. Well, at least for me, that didn't kind of like compute as like I didn't want to be a filmmaker because I spent a lot of time on film sets. I didn't want to actually be a filmmaker because I saw that it was hard work and it was a little bit chaotic and I remember being cold all the time. For some reason, I remember those experiences. So I always wanted to be a writer, and that's what I was kind of doing. And this filmmaking world was something that my dad did, and I was, I knew all his buddies and friends and people he worked with. And then eventually, but I always had a camera, and which was, I don't know where I was of that, but I always took pictures. And then eventually later on, I was kind of pushed to by my wife my girlfriend at the time, but like she thought that I could do well as a filmmaker, and there was this kind of impossible film academy to get into. They had so many applicants and it was so hard to get into whatever, and she said you should apply. I did. And I thought I wouldn't stand a chance, but I got in, and that's where I started thinking, like, maybe I can be a filmmaker. So, and after that, I kept taking pictures, and I started thinking like I was trained to be a director. I was never trained to be a cinematographer. So just my photography background maybe allowed for me to translate stuff into the cinematography realm, maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting. You came from a kind of a writing background, because I came from just being a fan of movies. I didn't have any like connections, which I think is probably most folks. and I thought I wanted to be in charge of the image. Like that's what got me into cinematography. Come to find out, I wanted to get into props. I liked what I was looking at. I didn't realize I didn't. But the thing that was hardest for me, like becoming a cinematographer, was like learning what the language, like the storytelling aspect of imagery. You know, did that help you at all, or were they kind of separate brains?
Well, it's interesting. It's not separate brains. I don't. How do I make this super to the point and simple?
We got an hour. You're good.
It's interesting how filmmaking is nowadays. There's this whole talk about storytelling as the main element of filmmaking, and that's fine in the narrative, in the narrative cinema or television, etc. It's fine. I don't really know if it's the main thing, because the what separates cinema from other arts is all the other things. The story is just one of them. Story is just one of the things that you put in there, and you don't have to. And in fact, originally, I mean, cinema really corresponds much better to poems than to really, a straight narrative of a like a regularly structured story. But we do communicate in cinema mostly through the dramatic structure of a story. So the images convey similar things to story. But what I think is very interesting is, or what I find the most exciting is, like, when you watch Tree of Life, and where the images and the story are actually at a disconnect until they come together. They like kind of complete each other, and then they go away again, and you're putting that drama. The drama's happening in your brain, your heart, and your soul. You're putting it together, and then the story and the images together create a cinema. And I think that's essential, and I believe in that truly. So I don't think that images tell a story, but the images and the story together create cinema, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, that's a good point, because I think, like, watching films, I obviously like gravitate towards. I try not to do the analytic. People always ask, like, since you're a cinematographer, do you just like judge a film the whole time? And it's like, only if it's bad. Like if it's, and I don't mean the cinematography even. I mean, well, unless it really stands out. But like if the story is bad, then I have time to judge, or even if it's good story or a good cinematography, bad story, then I have the time to like sit there and go like, well, the lighting's good. But if it's all together, you're not sitting there thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But there's also a thing. Cinema is so unique in cinema and television, whatever it is now.
It's all the same now.
Whatever distinction. It's like, is it not? Like, I kind of like, what I like? I like to think that you can have, I mean, let's say Breaking the Waves. Breaking the Waves is a fantastic film that doesn't look good. But it doesn't look good, not like it's bad cinematography. No, it looks appropriate, but it looks really rough. It looks, like you take that and apply it to something else. Well, that would not be appropriate. It has to be appropriate. So the image can be ugly, but appropriate. So I think what you were talking about, and I think about this all the time, when you look at a film and you're out of it and you start analyzing it, that's because the film doesn't work. And the story, if the story worked fully, and these images were appropriate for it, you wouldn't care if it's poorly shot, because that poorly shot thing was fitting for that story, or with that story even better, right? So it's such a fine line of, some things that I look at on the second or third viewing, and I think, okay, well, I would shoot this differently. Why is this not maybe great cinematography? Or why is it great cinematography? And I think, what if it wasn't? What would that be? And then I realized that an entity of film, can only happen once through somebody's, collective eye of all the filmmakers, whatever. And then it can be, maybe there might be a variation that redoes that, but that's rare, right? I mean, there's some instances of that. But when it works for some kind of magical reason where it doesn't have to be the best cinematography. It doesn't have to be the best story. Because you can take the story of Godfather, like the story of Godfather is a very simple story, but the film is very complex because it's about morality. It's about all these things that the story wasn't. But as a film, together with these images and this story, it's as close to perfection as it gets, right? So I love kind of thinking about philosophically about why cinema has those unique properties, because it works on an emotional level, not just on the story level, not just on the visual level.
So this is something I think about a lot, especially recently. I think people can over analyze and try to make a perfect film, a correct film, let's say. And recently I've been thinking a lot about how much of filmmaking, how much cinematography or just the movie in general is feeling, like maybe something isn't right, but it feels correct. And I think right now we kind of are in a society where we eschew feeling for technically correct in many forms, not just art, but kind of in general. And I'm wondering kind of because it's so undefinable. I'm hoping you can now define it. How do you think, is it just practice, being able to have a set skill and then learn how that makes you feel and then kind of forget it and just trust yourself to know that what you're doing fits everything? Or how do you kind of navigate that mental sort of quagmire?
Well, that's that it thing, that's the magic, I think. As young cinematographers, right, like we look and analyze things and we learn to, do this and that. And then slowly but surely you realize, like you're told that, the bigger the source, the closer that source is to the subject, the softer that light will be. Okay, well, you're told that. You can think about that. You can do all this. But then one day, and that's kind of a relatively simple concept, but one day that clicks and you see it and you realize it. And now you realize that you can actually push that and make it triple the size and it's going to be equally soft, but then you can do a move. And then it clicks, and then that's the easiest thing in the world. And now you're not thinking about it. Now you're using it, right?
Right.
And so, but that now, when you get to a certain level where there's many things like that click, right? Whatever, or what does it mean to, move the camera without a tilt or a pan where the dolly or whatever the crane brings you and the camera is nodal and all the lines are in painterly perspective and all those important things to me. But all those I could have known about, but I didn't know how they fit or how to apply them, right? And then the moment you're not thinking about them, that means you understand them, and that also means that maybe 40% of what you do and you think you understand, you also don't understand, but it's happening. But you're allowed because you understand the majority of it. So it's kind of like that magic tops magic, like, like you just, the magic keeps multiplying, and that's beautiful. And then at some point you start talking about how like none of that technicality matters. Well, it does, because you could have never, done any of this if you didn't understand it. And then you start, applying or thinking about philosophically, then you start, maybe the deduction of things that like you start maybe going against the norm. Maybe you reduce everything to its essence, like all these things. Now you're experimenting, and that now you can, like a painter, Picasso could draw a perfect rabbit, but then from that perfect rabbit, he wanted to show a human face form in a three-dimensional image on a piece of paper or whatever, and so he completely dissected what that rabbit meant once upon a time, right? So to get all that, he needed to know how to draw that rabbit realistically. So we all need to know how to draw that rabbit. Otherwise, we are faking it. I think it's very important to know how to draw a real rabbit, like a realistic-looking rabbit, and then that rabbit can be super abstract after that. And once you understand the rules of that, then you're really free to do whatever you want. And then that feeling comes. Then I can walk into that, the room that you're in and, turn everything off and just expose for those blinds behind you and say, this is what I feel here. Those white walls will fall, like, there's going to be enough of the range by the time I see you on the couch or whatever. And I'll be confident in that. And then with that confidence, with that confidence comes a special image, because you watch Dune. Dune is technically perfect, of course. It's super imaginative, but everything feels right in Dune. There's nothing that stands out. Everything goes together. So Greg Fraser and Villeneuve and all these guys, obviously a million people around him, they kind of, the symbiosis happened because they're all on that level or similar level where they like all of their knowledge kind of came within. Like there's a pyramid, like there's a peak, and that peak made that, beautiful movie. And that's what we're all striving for. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You're totally speaking my language here. On a sort of a more technical level almost, like famously Gordon Willis had to, scared the shit out of everyone, all the producers on The Godfather, because everything was dark and top lit and it was like, we can't see his fucking eyes. Have you ever run into a situation where you're like, no, this is the feeling we're going for, and you had like higher ups that maybe didn't know the art were like, no, it has to look like this because this is going to sell, or anything like that?
Yeah, listen, I think I've been lucky to I had only one situation where somebody was a TV show, and my look was tweaked. But I've been lucky my whole career where like it also comes with like, lucky comes with being brave, being bold, being like believing in what it is, right? Where you go, well, I understand this, you're pick something, superhero, whatever, television series or action series, but I really think they should all be silhouettes, and this is why I'm doing it. And also like kind of doing that with such confidence that nobody can question it, right? And then, but you gotta also kind of get there and then believe in yourself. And I don't think there's, in television in general, and people might hate that I'm saying this, there's a lot of safe doing, like let's do it. Let's also cover this and this, so we'll see later if we use. But who's gonna do it later? Who are these people? Who's making the movie? Like that question is like so weird in television, because we will do something that's called coverage. Coverage is a weird word, like there's no coverage in Dune. There's a shot that needs to be in this scene, and the next shot is this, and only those shots are the shots for this scene. There's no 10 more alternative shots, and that's why that's so good. But sometimes we make television, we want it to be like Dune, but we do it the opposite way. We also cover it, so somebody somewhere will also try this, and this. It's like, well, that wasn't our intention. Well, we gave it, like we all have faults for things not kind of working out the way. Like, so that one instance when my look was changed, I'm to blame, because I didn't realize what kind of show I was on. I was pushing something that maybe wasn't right. Maybe I wasn't confident. Like I can find faults in me for that. So you need to be super honest with yourself first, then do something that's brave or not. But like, darkness is something I like. I always have very dark things. People, every network, every studio always comments that, something's too dark. And then we kind of go, okay, well, this is why, this is what we're trying to do. I prepare what we call a visual manifesto. Visual manifesto is like how something's going to look with reference and everything. So we go, well, no, this is the philosophy we're going for. We adjust from there if we need to, but all of a sudden we're not going to make it super bright, etc. Like, we stand behind what we decided to do. And I think that's very important. That's how you do something special, because we wouldn't have the look of Godfather, which therefore influenced the look of like a gazillion things after, if Gordon wasn't confident, stubborn, and so good. That's what we need to be a little more. And it's easy to say, well, it's television, we can't do that. No, yes, we can. Yes, you and I know examples of many television shows that do that, and we like it. So if we like that, why are we making whatever our show differently? No, we should make what we feel, or what we all like, and we feel is like, there's a bunch of people that need to be on the same page, but you also have to figure out as a cinematographer how to get those people on the same page, or on your page that that you're trying to kind of like push, so the show can be dark brown and top lit with no eyes, whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. like the coverage thing's kind of funny because undoubtedly they're trying to, cover their ass, and that's the real coverage, and sort of save money, I guess. We don't have to do research. We need to make sure we get everything here. It's like, yeah, but you're spending, if we know we got the shot, you're technically spending more money to keep shooting something. Like you're keeping everyone here longer. You got maybe rent longer, whatever, So it's kind of like, cutting the bottom off a blanket and sewing it to the top. But the other thing that you mentioned about recognizing within yourself, was the look tweaked in post, or did they like tell you, no, we're moving that?
Well, I was in that particular instance, actually quite nice people that I was working with. And we arrived at this like really advanced look with the show run, like it was a 70s movie and all that. Like, look, the movie wasn't in the 70s, but the series wanted that feel. And we arrived there and together and all of that. And then, like the usual, they said, is it a little dark? And the answer is, no, that's what we want. But the answer was, unfortunately, yeah, we're making it a little brighter. So then he came to me. I'm like, well, I don't want to make it brighter. This is what we talked about. So eventually I had that many warning signs. And in the end, they made it a little brighter. Was it a disaster? No. Was my version much more appropriate for the series? Probably. But there it is. Like it happened to me once. I think it has to happen to everybody. So I learned from that. I was like, well, look what I was trying to do on a network show. Like,
yeah.
Who's to blame there? Like me? Because I didn't realize this is a made network show. They will not go for all of that. So I needed to maybe feel a little more, like whichever way to get my way, but, make them feel like they're getting the look that's safer, I guess, right?
Well, and so that brings me to what my point was going to be. You might notice in our time together that I have a habit of starting one question and then qualifying it with a different one and then coming back to it.
That's all good.
I'm sure the listeners over a year now are fucking thrilled with it. But the friends in my life certainly are. Something that everyone I think matures at a different rate, but one point where I could tell, like, all right, I don't think I have like, not a youthfulness. What am I trying to say? Like an uneducated energy or something like that was when I learned how to not be defensive when stuff like that happens. Recognize, like you were saying, oh, these are some things that I did wrong. And still being able to say, like, and that's what they did wrong. Like you can, but starting with what could I have done differently, or like how could I have managed that? So in a lot of cases, I've found that if you're working for a network or whatever, being like, okay, I now know what they want. What can I do to kind of trick them into doing what I want, and have like a backup plan to give them their thing if they need it, but like try to sneak my thing in there. And like that was very helpful to me as a person, not just a cinematographer.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's interesting. I guess it's because my background, like, my Bosnian stubbornness or whatever, like I'd like to be as straight up as possible. And I'll often in the interview stage to get a job, I'll say, this is what I'm about. So I don't think you want me if you don't like those things, and I think that's very fair to myself, but more importantly to them. And you can't, I don't advise young cinematographers to go do that very straight up, because you need to get some jobs to kind of get, like, you got to judge that. You got to earn it. Yeah, and you feel it when you can't do that. But being honest and being truthful is very important, because then you carry that same thing, how you light, how you frame, how you direct actors, how you write, whatever you are doing, you're carrying that same thing. It's a very anchoring good thing. So you're trying to never, because we've all done what you're saying, and that makes sense. But then you're never actually going, oh yeah, I'll make this whatever. I used to, a long time ago, I would give, an example of, like, the frame, how I want it to be, colored, very desaturated. and then I would desaturate one more super like almost black and white, and then I would saturate one like in a bad way, and then I would show them that, and they would pick mine. Like that's manipulative, and but I've done it, as a young
Sure.
cinematographer, so we were on the same. But I don't do like I now only in that manifest. This is what I see, and then comments. We talk because we're creating something, and then that's the honest, truthful thing that we carry, and once we all is like we'll evolve, but that's what we agreed to, that's what we wanted, so I expect everybody to be as honest as me, and if they're not, well, then you deal with that, and that's okay.
Well, and that honesty, I agree with you, and also that honesty gives you a position of not pride, but confidence. You're not going out on a limb and trying something. It's like, this is coming from me. I know this. If it's challenged, I can back it up, and I know what I'm talking about in this instance.
No, very true, very true, and it gives you calm. I mean, that's like when we're kids, you're lying about something and it's a white lie, but like you feel like, oh my god, they can read through. Your parents know that you bought candy for that money. Like you never want to feel like deceiving somebody, especially in the world where you're like, there's so many elements to cinematography, directing, television, directing, films. There's so many elements. Like the more you can take away from the complication of things of the process, then why wouldn't you? And I think that honesty and truthfulness is like takes one big complication away, less politics, less everything. You just like you're there because I have a crew, like I work with the same ish crew for like 15 years, and we're all good friends, and we all like we don't have to even talk about it. We used to talk about it, but we don't anymore. We like all we care about is that frame, whatever aspect ratio it is, whatever format. That's everything. Everything else outside the frame can be somebody's ego, bad idea, politics, what good idea, whatever. But within that frame is what counts. And when you do that, it's so simple. Do we have issues? Do we have complications? Well, of course we do. But when you focus on that one thing and everybody honestly wants that to be the best, it doesn't matter what it is then. It's just like the frame will be as good as we can make it.
Totally. Kind of going back to something I wanted to touch on was your background in photography. Did you have kind of influences growing up, or was it more of just like a sort of creative, just like snapping around or something? Or did you have kind of like a intent there?
Well, my dad would give me my dad really believed in like knowing technically, knowing what one is doing. It was very important in order to break the rules and whatever else you want to do. So he would give me assignments, cool. Depending on my age. He would give me assignments that are not unlike the assignments that you would get like a photography academy or cinematography academy, where he would say, okay, well, an exercise in day for night, or pictures with only 3 colors in them, or many like patterns or whatever it is, and then you go for that, and or portraits that are only with the 50 mil, or just use 50 mil. Like there's so many of these things that you can do, and it's fun. And then I would do that, and then I would print the photographs, and he would take them and then take 2 pieces of paper and then like reframe them for me and go, is this better? Is that better? I learned, and framing was very important to him. Obviously light, why the light is a certain way, etc. And then, at some point that came naturally to me. So, that moment is actually the most magical in photography. When you feel what the right composition is, that is so important. Like that, I envy every kid, who will arrive at that, at some point soon, as they're developing their, picture taking, and you just feel that that's right. And then you need to be able to explain why that is. But as you take that picture, you took a good one, like that is so good. And why
it really does. Like, I know exactly what you're talking. The way I've, like you just saying that, the way I kind of visualize it is when I'll be shooting something and when I, chimp the frame or whatever, it for a second, I'm like, I don't think I took that. Like it exists outside my creation. Like it's like too good, you know, like that's not, do we frame this? What, you know?
Nice. Yeah. That exists in, you know, every day on set. That is like when we do something and like you look through a viewfinder, it's good, it's here. And we think it's here. And my operator, Joe or Dave, they'll go, okay, yeah, that's, you know, we look through we have a democratic tool, we call it. So it's called the device. It's just an iPad with Artemis,
Handles.
I think, and handles, you know, like that thing. So we look at it and somewhere there. And then when I come back in whatever, 5 minutes, just to check on whichever frame, and you look and you go, that's not like every single intention and emotion, everything, like it's just perfect. And it just makes you happy. And then sometimes you come there and Joe would say to me, it's never going to work. Like, and it really, like you look at, oh my God, it's never going to work. And then we have this, Joe invented this phrase, apparently we together invented this phrase, which is struggle, struggle, love it, which means we're going to struggle, and then all of a sudden we go, love it, leave it, you know. Make t-shirt.
Perfect. Yeah. Another thing that would be good to make, it would be just thinking about like your dad giving you assignments would be like a little like 36 point assignments, like one roll of film, just to like, just, you know, I'm just saying like to distribute to people, you know, just to put out there on the internet and be like, here's like, if, you know, one roll film school, like, you know, here's 36 photos you should take, do that. Cause I remember when I was in, I went to New York Film Academy before I went to college, just on like a summer program. And that was one thing they had us do, is because we would have 400-foot rolls of 16. So whatever that was, like 8 minutes or something. And they gave us like a shot list, and they were like, you know, and it was simple stuff because it was always black and white. So it was like underexpose a stop, underexpose 2 stops, overexpose this, you know, get a close up like this, blah, 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 blah. But it would be cool now that you mention it. Like, we'll have to work on that. We'll work on that later.
It's good.
But yeah. So how does your photography? So your this is, I'm going to keep harping on this because I'm fascinated, because I started in photography as well, I suppose, but it was not a artistic endeavor. It was literally just shoot. I liked images and I liked taking pictures of my friends, and but composition was completely out the window. I learned about lighting. Like, I think I bought my first flash, like off camera flash, like 6 years into owning a camera, you know. I guess I didn't do photos first because I was shooting video before that, but, you know, stealing the parents' camcorder and whatnot. But photography and cinematography are like a Venn diagram where some things are the same, but there's a lot of like I've gotten in the habit. Tim Ives actually turned me on to a shit ton of photo books that he uses as reference. So I bought a bunch of them, and looking through them, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, wow, this is perfect. And a lot of stuff I'm like, this would never, I mean, I shouldn't say never, but like they don't immediately stand out as a cinema frame. Roger Deakins' book, I just got Byways. I actually have 2 copies on accident.
Yeah, me too.
And a lot of his photos do not look like cinema frames, you know, like that's a different brain. How do you, how do those 2 things work for you in your head? Like how do you approach those?
Well, it's a difference between, I mean, it's very simple. I don't think it's simplistic. It's very complicated, but it's simple. There's a difference between motion and a moment. You know, photography is all about the moment. And no matter what it is, like even if it's a landscape with mountains, it's still a moment in time that was the photograph that, you know, is only seen through your eyes if you took it, etc. And then cinema that has elements of that depending on, you know, what it is, but the motion, the fact that, you know, there's motion of film through that camera, and there's multiple images that capture all these moments, but together they create movement. That's all the difference you need to know to understand that, you know, one photograph versus many photographs that create meaning is a big difference. And that's the difference between cinema and photography. And also the function of photography and the function of cinema are very different. I think they're both forms of art, fine, of course, but cinema is or television or whatever, make a melange of things.
Yeah.
It also evolved just like photography did. Photography, like, everything is photography. Snapping a picture of your dog jumping in the snow is photography with your phone. But Ansel Adams is photography too, right? So they're in the same, but they're not. Like, it's not really the same thing. Same thing with television and film, etc., where that artistic medium that becomes also an informational entertainment, which the word entertainment, because it's the entertainment industry first. Well, drama, theater, therefore cinema, so like it's all meant to be a discussion on a theme, something that happens in our lives, and then we all discuss it through art, painting, whatever. Well, when you say that it's entertainment first, they obviously evolved or went into a different direction that takes it away from its maybe intended essence, and that's what happened with both photography and cinema in some ways. But we're still talking about things that are essentially cinematic. For example, in cinema, which is like you can't say that I don't know, pick some like a Fincher film is always very 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 cinematic, equally to a Fincher series. Like that's or a photograph that is a full recreation or something seemingly real, and something that's a real moment that was captured. Both of them are like come back to that essence of a moment. You just recreated one and then captured it, and the other one is you have to steal that moment. So they are very different. They depend on each other, and I think most cinematographers. My dad always said that, and I never. I don't know if I ever understood it fully until maybe recently. But my dad was always saying, like, most cinematographers don't make good photographers, because if they're good cinematographers, their brain and their souls now thinks very differently, because the purpose of cinematography is different than the purpose of photography.
Yeah, because like a portrait is often very different than a close-up, but could like a movie or whatever, but could be executed nearly identically. Like I would love to see, just as like an exercise, although he did do it. Do you know Dan Winters, the photographer?
I'm not sure. No,
Look up Dan Winters. He's very unique lighting style, and I think he only shoots. He probably doesn't only shoot film, but does a lot of. You'll probably recognize. He's been hired for a lot of editorial, but his lighting style is so unique that I've always thought, like, if this guy shot a movie, this would look weird if he did it the same, and not like cool, but like very hyper stylized kind of, not like a Martin Scholler kind of like craziness, but then he made a short film, but it's like mostly like animated and stuff. And I haven't seen it. I would love to interview the man, but it looks like he didn't do his traditional thing. He did more of like a, cinematic lighting and stuff like that. And I was really fascinated by that he would not that like it was surprising, but that he kind of stuck to a more traditional.
Well, yeah, because the media kind of carries that message, right? And, and it makes sense. It does make sense. However, there are photographers, or even more interesting, there are painters that I'd love to know how they would make a movie. Like what movie would look like if they see the world that way. How do you translate that into something, seemingly realistic, which is the lure of cinema too. But how would, I don't know, Monk or whatever, how would they make it? So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's fascinating. I reference paintings more than photographs. I don't know
why. That is something that a lot of the people I've interviewed have said, that it's more. And I thought about that too. Like, and I wonder if it's because the painting is like the ultimate artistic expression of not only the artist but light. Like, it's fully controlled. Like, I'm sure you've been in a situation where you're like, I just want to tweak that just a little, and you kind of have to go with it because you don't have time or budget or whatever. But a painter has theoretically all the time in the world to get that light slash, the Caravaggio kind of thing going perfect. It's like to them, whatever they meant to do. And that's a complete guess, but I'm wondering if that's kind of the.
Well, part of it is, I think that's why cinematography and painting has, like, I believe in those similarities, because both recreate the world in many ways from scratch. I mean, sometimes, obviously we shoot something in a real location, but we still manipulate it, take it from this angle, that angle, with this light or that light. But it's a painter really chooses the moment and recreates it fully, because it doesn't even have to exist. But cinema is like that too. Like, none of this exists until that camera rolls, and then we shape the light or whatever, and all those external things of time and ability, etc. are granted. But when you eliminate them, we actually do quite similar things to painters, because we completely recreate. Not that the photographers don't, because there are some that do that, and that's the cool part, of course.
Yeah.
So it all is related. And I don't know. Maybe I don't know why. When you look at a painting, what happens to me, at least, I really look beyond the painting, or I feel beyond that painting, right? Because you look at it and you imagine what that world is like if that person got up from the window in the Rembrandt painting and went up those stairs. What's up the stairs, And that becomes a movie then. Not that you don't, again, do that in the photograph, but I find that the paintings are maybe by what they are, by their medium, maybe they carry even more magic. I don't know if that's shallow thinking.
No, that brings me to an interesting thought. I have a theory that a lot of people, because there's right now, especially in the kind of let's say indie world, or like newcomer sort of world, let's say, there's this voracious appetite to make things cinematic. And I think that the rise of better and better cameras has made cinema harder to achieve, because it's now too realistic. And I think a photograph is fairly realistic. Usually, I mean, like in the sense of the image, right? A painting is expressive. It leaves room. It's imaginative. And, we see plenty of people who will make films, and you throw some filters on it, you fuck with it in the grade or whatever. You try to take away the reality. You try to muddy it a little bit so that it's not so, people always say, like, oh, we want people to be fully immersed in the movie. And it's like, no, you don't. Because if someone was murdered in front of you, you'd be horrified if you were fully immersed. Yeah, right? Yeah, you want them to buy into the story. You don't want them to be like locked in. It's not a documentary.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's like the painting thing, is like it's enough a way that you can really buy into it. You can create the world, in your head.
Yeah, well, they're and we're often after that painterly feel, right? And then
So actually, probably should talk about the show that sent you over here, or the shows, I guess. Do you work with Fraser like a lot, or is it just so happened that you two shot 2 series together?
Well, I was
because I'm talking to him tomorrow.
Oh, cool. Fraser and I met a while ago. He's I was a little bit of a mentor for Fraser, and then when as we progressed with various shows, he started doing second unit for us when he started shooting, and then more and more. And Fraser's a super talented guy. So at some point in season two of Titans, he shot the episode. He shot the episode I directed, and then when it came to season 3, Brendan Stacy, who alternated with me previously, he moved on, and I thought Fraser was ready to take the next step, and he was definitely ready, more than ready. And then same thing with Langdon. We got with the Lost Symbol. We got to we had a lot of friends on that show, the producer, etc. I was still in Titans, and Frasier was finishing earlier, so I said, "Listen, you guys, let's go. Let's." Frasier comes over. I'm still in Titans. Then I come over. Like, we made a complicated deal, but it really worked out. So we love working with each other, and it's a lot of fun. He's a very talented kid.
Yeah, I have a confession, and that is when Titans first came out, I was like, oh, that could be cool. And then reviews are coming out, like, it is cool. And I was like, oh, well, fuck it, I'm going to watch it. And then I am the worst at getting on TV shows, like watching TV shows. So I didn't. I just watched, I picked an episode. I was just like, I'm going to go through here and just grab one, just watch it, see what we're talking about. And I picked the Red Hood episode because I had seen the animated movie. And I come from, I was trying to find something I might remember, because I come from the kind of Batman original animated series era. I didn't really watch Teen Titans. Love the sort of vibe, I guess, of the show, that, more mature, like superhero kind of. It doesn't quite feel like a superhero show necessarily, even though there's very superhero things about it. I will say it. So I have to ask, did you shoot Red Hood?
I don't think I shot. Which one's Red Hood?
That's the one where all the people are being done up in red hoods and like they bomb a bank.
Yeah, no, Frasier shot that.
That was the thing that sucked. So on the IMDb, it says you both shot everything. And then about halfway through the Red Hood episode, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I just realized I don't know if he shot this. And then it got all the way through to the end, and then it said like cinematography by Frasier, and I was like, shit.
And that's okay. We have a similar. I mean, Frasier, adopted the style that we shot the show with, so he's more capable, and he upgraded. So yeah, it's fine. We shoot in a very similar way.
Right on. So I'll have specific questions for him then. But it was funny in the opening scene of that show, because I was watching it like kind of analytically for the interview. The first thing I saw was like 18 Titan tubes on top of this, center table, and I was like, Titan tubes, stupid, because the show's called Titans. But kind of something that I noticed about at least the episode, but I assume this is kind of through the show, is there's a lot of mixed color temperatures. Mm-hmm. What's kind of the approach there, and how do you balance the realism of the show with this sort of hyper realism of it being a comic book or superhero adaptation?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because when we did the pilot for the show, a bunch of people, Greg Walker, our showrunner, Greg Berlanti, our producer, and then Akiva Goldsman, Jeff Johns, and a bunch of other people. We were talking about what the show wants to be. Well, I don't know if it's a bunch of other people, but a few more people in there. Brad Anderson, who directed the pilot, and myself, and we were like, okay, well, what should this show be? And we all kind of brought the same or similar feel to it, because we really wanted it to be grounded. We wanted to be grounded so people feel for these characters in a good way, so they see their human side, and then eventually they'll fight in these costumes and they're superheroes. That's what you'll expect, but they will have the drama about them will be not the drama of the superhero, but the drama of a person. And that's how the show was conceptualized and carried out. And, the whole beginning of the show with the famous "fuck Batman" line, like that kind of was like a grounding line for us, and where Robin and eventually Nightwing goes. But we, in the quest to be grounded, we knew that there are going to be certain aspects of the show that will feel like a comic book, because once everybody puts those costumes on, it will feel like a comic book. And the costumes are great, but that's a comic booky thing, right? So other than that, we tried to make it as indie looking as possible within this world and make it super dark, because there were some very dark themes that we're playing with. So it all came together. And it's, we talked about it earlier. It's one of those moments we start shooting day 3, we're in this, or day 2 in this police station, and we're in Detroit police station, Dick Grayson's a detective, isn't that? And then you just see around the monitor that everybody is beyond loving what this looks like. Dark side to camera, simple, super soft lighting, everything is edged with a million Titan tubes and etc. Whatever. Like, our setups are huge, but it's very simple. And that was always my philosophy. Like, that's always my philosophy of things. Like, how do you reduce everything to the simplest elements? And you just see everybody. And so we never talked about the look again, because that was the look. And everybody was super happy about it. I don't think we ever talked about how desaturated something is, how bright, how green, how, like, it was like we had fully, like, everybody on every level just loved it. And that is magical too. Like, that's one of those things you really want. The look evolved eventually a little bit here and there, like, went to San Francisco in the second season and third season. We were in Gotham, and like, the first and third season are darker than the middle season, etc. But all of that was based on where, the story is going, where the characters are, and also based on a lot of experimentation and pushing the boundaries. There's a show that's we've been very successful in the in the realm of awards and stuff like that for a show that's essentially a superhero show, with the difference that we were set up to and allowed to be different and special, and that's amazing, because that's what we were given. Like, we were set up to succeed. So everybody who came in just followed the look, followed the feel, and it was easy. Speaking of the sources, it was always a thing to, like, we desaturate quite a bit. So and therefore the mixing of the source, I really like to mix sources, and I like the warm light to hit somebody who's far from the windows. But I also, in the first season, in the second season, all the seasons, it's a very cool in terms of the spectrum, very cool looking show. So it does have the blue and cyan, mostly is prominent. It's quite desaturated, and there are various nuances in, like, what light is allowed to hit where and how far light penetrates into a room, and that has to do with, like, where they are psychologically, what the character knows about themselves or other people, etc. So we play with that a lot. And light is a luxury in the show. Light is like, you get light when there's a reason that you're more visible, less visible. We try for the characters to be in a lot of darkness, because they are.
Yeah. Because the reason I ask about the mixed color temperatures is I personally have in my professional career, having been an amateur for a very long time, I don't feel like I've nailed mixed lighting yet. I don't know. Like, on film, it felt easier. I only shot motion film for a little bit, but film photography, it felt easier to mix. Sort of digital, it just feels so, like, in this setup, like, if this light was warm, even exposing it, whatever, at 43, it just still feels so drastically not cohesive. And I'm wondering how you approach kind of what your philosophy is to mixing sources and how to make it all look like it's not suddenly artificial or contrived or whatever.
Well, I try not to make it too much of a difference, first of all. And I'm really into the look. Like, we really cook a lot of that look on set. We have an on-set colorist who... That
was going to be my next question.
Yeah, we don't do live color. I don't like live color, but they're in their own trailer making stuff in accordance to what we talk about, and then we constantly revise it the whole day. But we use a lot of desaturation. Desaturation tends to kind of bring all of that together a little more and melange it. And I just don't, if a warm light on your right side there is from that lamp, my right. Camera right. If that's 4,000, then that window is 5600. That makes sense to me.
Gotcha.
I would do something like that. Sometimes I'd make that a lot warmer, then maybe correct to that key and let the window go, even like for whatever reason. But it's all about kind of finding those levels. So there are extremes, but the extremes in color, I find, in general, I find that too much color is, sometimes means that we didn't really refine and define the world. So I think too much color is quite can be vulgar. You need to really strict color so they mean something. Like a color that's allowed to dominate means something. Well, just like with anything else, really. And we play with quite, like, our contrast is quite low. It's just like our levels are quite low as well. So it seems contrast, but you see a lot in the shadows, etc., which also helps that mix, because our fill light, when in existence, and we do have a little bit of it, is usually like if the key light is a little warmer, then that fill is a little cooler, right. So those shadows kind of have that, and then we infuse a lot of cyan into the shadows, and sometimes around the highlights with the warmth, let's say.
So is it a very LED heavy show then, because you're like constantly tweaking color temperatures all over the place?
Yeah, I don't know if we constantly tweak it. We do tweak it a lot, but it's extremely LED heavy. Well, only our big lights are like our 18s and etc. HMI. Everything is HMI based. Our studio as well, which is expensive for the production, but it allows the most range because we like to be on the cool side of the spectrum, and then it also allows for something that is a lot warmer to go even warmer depending on where you set the camera, etc. So other than those big HMIs, everything is LED. It's Titan tube, sky panel, heavy show with light mat. The light gear light mats and light time, and the lights that we build. I have a lot of lights that people will call them Boris lights, because somebody, when we built them the first time, wrote Boris 1 and Boris 2 on the first two, and then they became Boris lights. But they're just like these 4x4 boxes, and I didn't invent them. But they're 4x4 boxes. Because I tried to figure out how to make a light that's inherently soft right away when you turn it on. So the back of a 4x4 frame essentially is laced with a bunch of LED, like a good one. Like I buy a really light gear LED, and we then diffuse maybe whatever that is, 5-6 inches from that, heavily diffused with white duvetine and layers. Like, we're crazy on diffusion. And then that box is kind of like, I can toss it to you, you can toss it back to me. It's very light, right? So we just lean, wherever we need it, and then people can also grab it, and we walk with the light a lot. If the camera has marks, actors have marks, lights have marks, and then you don't notice it. In our show, there's a lot of walking light, but they're big walking sources, because a tiny source you can see, big giant source you don't see, and that's another thing that for young cinematographers think about and try. Because when that sinks in, when you see that, like, you have a big giant source and you walk everywhere and the light consistently stays the same on the face, that's what you want. You don't know it. You don't notice it when the source is big enough.
Yeah, there's actually two things. One, the aha moment for me that was similar to that wasn't necessarily about large sources, but it was about, I saw a behind the scenes photo from Fight Club where they had a guy just holding a Kino tube over Edward Norton as he's going down the the flat moving sidewalk, and he has his style. And it must have been like, I was still in college, and I just remember going, oh, you can move the light with them. No one's going to know that you're just carrying a light over, because in your head you're like, they must have had a big light that went all the way down. It's like, no, you just had one little one. You just
yeah, totally. And it's that proximity, right? Like how close it is to him. So all of a sudden a small light becomes big enough. Yeah,
and I think it was like wagoned up, had a tube of diffusion on it. But the second question was going to be, I had taken a peek. I don't have Peacock, so I had to look up some clips. Here's the classic coming back around. I looked before we get to Lost Symbol real quick. I looked up some behind the scenes from Titans that I'd found, and going back to your idea of those massive sources. I think it might have been a clip from Red Hood, but the characters, that didn't make any sense. But they're out on a street, and yeah, I saw like a giant 12 by and then a giant 8 by, and then I think it was that box you were talking about, but I think it was like a 6, and they were like walking around with it.
Probably. We name lights in weird ways. So there's a light called the Bosnian Shield, which is, I think, I'll lie to you now, I think it's a 4 by 2.5 or something like that. They'll laugh at me. So that's the smallest light we carry. We carry. And then from there, like we have something called the beaker box, which is an 8 by 6. Again, I'm not certain. So we can put in those frames, we can put a bunch of Titan tubes and then heavily diffuse, and that's on wheels. So it can, like on a downtown street, they walk, we go forever.
I think
so you probably saw that. And then we go like further, like as we need, and we get all the way to, and I did not invent this, David Green invented this on monkeys when we shot monkeys. It's called Taj Mahal. We call it Taj Mahal because it's the ultimate light. It's a gigantic, like they build it to like 30 by whatever, 20, with a giant thing that they build on SCAF, and inside is like whatever you want, three 360s through bounced, and it's on these special pneumatic wheels. So when we have giant buildings, like we have several in Toronto, like these gigantic warehouse buildings, we'll build 4 of those, and those not necessarily move in the shot, but you shoot down the line this way, and then you have to go further. Then this light just goes one around, and that's how you like the big space gets lit super, like 4 people. They push it. Okay, we're lit there. We have perfect sight. The side light is our thing, right? And and then when you reverse, they just go a little bit that way, and you're lit super quickly yet super softly. So we have the names, like like the Bosnian wedges are these things that in the studio we have sky panels, and then we have intermediate diffusion, and then another diffusion that goes like that. It has all kinds of maneuvers they can do. So we call that the Bosnian wedge. I don't know why, because it looks like a wedge.
That's just to modify the softness, like depending on where in the frame it hits.
Yeah, like if you go like that with the light, and you bring another one straight down, and then this one you direct the light a little more, or you double diffuse, or you lift it up if you don't want it. It can be hard, lift them both up. So we try to be creative with how we achieve things, and we skirt everything. We try, one interesting about Titans or anything we do is with this amazing crew, they can do it. We try to give ourselves like 3 or 4 looks on stage for each set. So it's like, okay, fly this up, make it, there's the HMIs will go through, supplement with a little bit of diffused sky panels from above. And then the next scene, take the 18s up on the motor and bring these other sky panels down on the Bosnian wedge, so it's soft and a little bit of a wrapping soft. Now we shoot that scene, and it looks like it's raining outside, whatever. When it's sunny, when it's raining, it's just so the show has a little bit of a dynamic in time,
Yeah. So the other thing I was gonna say about Lost Symbol was just looking at clips and stuff. Obviously, the 2 shows don't look the same, but there are similarities. Like I could see sort of you in them, and I was wondering kind of what your. Obviously, every show's different and every shot's different, but what kind of is what is it possible for you to define that you-ness that I'm seeing? What are you trying to do when you see, like, obviously big soft keys is something I definitely noticed, a good little scratch here and there, but obviously like, the keys in, or just the whole show in Lost Symbol, very warm. Whereas, like you were saying, Titan's quite cool. But like, how do you what's your generalized approach there that you're kind of bringing?
It's very simple. And it, again, once you arrive with it and when it sits, if you like it, then applying it is all that kind of is left to do. I truly believe that I work closely with the designer. And I truly believe that the designer and I will edge the space with a million practicals. You probably noticed, like we have a gazillion of them. They will not really give light. They're edging. They're not about light. They are sculptures of light. But they give the edge to the space, and then I'm simply there to super softly, as close as I can, with the biggest source I can, to light the faces. And that's my mission. And I like the face, and everybody looks really good, but it looks very realistic. And like it's a matter of like just making the right ratio between the background and foreground. That's all I do.
It's actually great you say that, because that was a note I did. My notes are on top of the teleprompter. That was something I noticed, was all of the practicals. And where did I put it? Oh yeah, the question was how many practicals versus fixtures. Because another thing that I've noticed, the more and more that I've studied cinematography in my life, but interviewing cinematographers, is how important set design is, not only to the lighting, but to the look. I've noticed a lot of younger cinematographers think that it all comes down to the colorist. Fincher famously, everything looks kind of green and like flat and stuff. It's like, yeah, but he shoots pretty clean. It's like everything is green on set. The walls are green. He's not tweaking it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's crucial. I mean, listen, when you tweak it, you need to tweak it from a point that you understand, and then tweak it to a point that you also understand. Sometimes you'll make one wall green, one gray. So when you take some green out of that, that's the gray is going to get, a little bit of whatever magenta that you want, whatever the situation is. But I mean, it's absolutely crucial. I think that, in the cinematic way of working with the designer is everything, because you have to define what it is that we're all after, and then work on these sets together by, it's not about lighting, not about the look, it's about all of that. And we all have to be in that together, and saying that, there should be 2 more windows is just one of the things, but what's the feel of this space? So like all of this after the initial sketch or whatever the designer does, and then inputting these practices, then when you work with a new designer, well, for me, it's always it's not a challenge, but at the beginning, it's like, how do I say, when I say how many practicals I want in this set, they're going to think I'm insane. So I'm just going to make a joke. I always say, okay, here we go. We need this many practicals, because when it looks ridiculous, it looks right. And that's what we say, because you never actually pay attention to that. You don't know that there's 48 practicals in the frame.
They're not all in the frame at the same time.
Yeah, and plus that. Now, once you develop that trust with the designer, the magic happens. And on Lost Symbol and on Titans, I've never not been lucky with that. I've always been super lucky with that. And we really do it together. And, they influence, or they are to praise for the cinematography of a show as much as any, or as much as a cinematographer. And it should be also vice versa, because we need to do that all together. Then it's really good. Then when, that's why I give lighting plans. Like we always talk about lighting, the feel of it and how it's going to look. And then like a sample of, this room could look like this. We'll light it like this. What do you think? So the wall actually should be a little bit darker green, because that window is going to, allow a lot of light on that wall behind you on the right, whatever. So we'll make that wall darker. That's super important, to actually be prepared together.
Yeah. I got one more super techie question, similar to related, and then I'll let you go, because again, it's been a few months. I was not looking at the time. But what are you, because I'm, now that cameras are so sensitive without being noisy, and we're often using LEDs that aren't necessarily the brightest, or not, depends on the light, obviously. Lighting ratios can get kind of flattened out. What are you, what kind of contrast ratios are you generally aiming for, and what tends to be your shooting stop? Because, I remember using like mole lights and stuff. Turn that thing on, it's like instant F11, that you had to then like bring it all down, because it was just blowing out, your sensor, your film or whatever. But I did notice that kind of gave the image that snap and stuff, and now everything kind of feels a little flatter if you don't massage it.
Yeah, well, when you with our style, with the heavily diffused sources, where you can kind of not, you cannot diffuse them enough in a way, like we double diffuse everything, etc. We tend to work with kind of around T2, but it also depends on the lens. But I usually light to T2 and a half. And then I'll bring, like if I shoot on the K35s, which I love, then I'll tend, that lens really works when it's wide open or almost wide open. Like that's the magic is there. So then I'll ND, like I'll always ND outside. I'll shoot inside, outside at the same stop. Day, night, doesn't matter. I'll bring it all down to that because I do like soft backgrounds. I can't even, like, it's only a few times in my life that I think that a deep stop would do something good. I can't even, I'm probably not a purist in that sense at all. Like, I don't like deep stops at all. And then anamorphic lenses, which we shoot Titans in, we have this, like, it's kind of similar lens package. We anamorphics,
Orions, right?
2.8. We shoot on the Atlas anamorphics, and we shoot K35s, and we also shoot on like a Cinematographer, which I quite like.
Yeah, I actually interviewed Dan Keynes, the guy who invented the Atlas a few episodes ago.
They're awesome.
Yeah, they're dope. That's the one thing. Shooting those wide open can get dicey, but
I shoot them in 2.8. That's like one of those, almost a little bit of an old school thing, but the image, unless it's intended, can get a little softer. So I think 2.8 is kind of really optimal there.
Yeah. So what? So you're shooting it at a 2.5, but what are the lights metering at that stop? Like how much ND are you throwing on there?
I light to that stop.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because one thing and I don't know if this comes down to coloring, or maybe you don't have an answer for this, but there is a look that TV and movies have, just an extra thing, and maybe it is just using an Alexa LF and SICK lenses and set design. But there's just this little extra 10% that I can never put my finger on. Like, why does that look different? And my recent theory has been what I was saying, like the contrast ratios and stuff. Like maybe that's not what we're doing right or whatever. But it's just been something I've been. Do you even know what I'm talking about when the difference?
I do. I think ratios in general are crucial. That differentiates a good cinematographer or a great cinematographer or a good cinematographer. It's all about those ratios with that background how it actually responds, or how it correlates with your face right now, and why right now your face is much brighter than I would make it compared to that window.
It was brighter when I started.
No, I know.
Sun's gone down.
Saying in a movie, obviously, but that's key, to making something believable, and that has to be a feeling. Like you gotta arrive, and that's like one of those aha moments, and that's an advanced one because I see people light the right way or whatever that means, like something that I can understand. I think they did it, but their ratios were completely off. So you follow cinematographers, young, like you give advice. I have some mentees and stuff like that, and you give that advice, and slowly you see, oh my God, they're getting, and now it's there. And then they really like take off because they figured out that crucial thing of the ratios, which is, where you separate the good and the great.
I mean, I'm definitely still like feeling my way through it, but how much impact does the colorist now have on what otherwise would have been just like the film stock and good lighting?
Well, a great deal. I mean, I there are things I don't control and set now. Some things I don't. There are many things. I think it needs to be used. Like we try to use it as a tool that enhances something and do something that you couldn't before. Like it's, or you couldn't do it easily. I mean, the ENR technique or whatever, like where you put stuff in, like detail in the shadow, like it's relatively easy to do, but knowing what to do and how much to do, and how does that correspond to what your lighting ratios is super important. And it's not that easy. Like this, the colorist cannot, like, if your ratios are not where you want them to be, sure, they can help a little bit, but they can't save all. Like, you gotta get there. Like, you gotta actually do it right. Still, and then they can enhance it and make it magical. They can flatten your highlights. They can flatten. I really enjoy. I don't know. I enjoy using polarizers inside. I like the flat and dull highlight on the face. We track faces and dull them to a great. So the soft light becomes even softer. It's a little bit of an obsessive thing, but you
can, and it's not like in Resolve. It's pretty easy. Circle, track, and it's like 3 seconds.
Well, it tracks it so well now. I mean, compared to 5 years ago, it tracks it. I'm like, whew, that's possible too.
And it's crazy too, because like I've had the same computer for 5 years, basically. A little less than that, but like you're saying, like it used to take longer, and the software's gotten so much better that now I don't have to upgrade my computer as fast because like it just works better now, which is completely the opposite of the way it used to be.
Of what? Yeah. Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed coloring. That being a DP now, like at my level, is basically like I had to learn to be my own colorist. Lord knows I'm going to fix this now that we've talked about it. No one's going to see the way that this just random Arilet looks on this thing. But like having to learn how to color my own stuff. And it was a net benefit too, because I can offer that as a service. People have me edit things, and I can just be like, well, I'm going to make it look pretty too. Nice. We'll let you go. I like to end every podcast with the same couple questions. The first one being, what's a movie? First one being, what's a piece of advice that you either heard or read or was given to you that stuck with you not like the most, but just kind of the first one that comes to mind, whether it be cinematography or life, just kind of maybe something that's constantly repeated in your head that was either given to you or you read or whatever.
Well, there are a few. My dad gave me a lot of advice that still sticks with me. But one, when you were just asking this question, the first thing I thought of is something that a person from this post house many years ago, as we were doing a short film on 35, we were all excited about that, and he was a colorist, and he said, kid, if you're gonna, and he was about to retire, and he said, if you're gonna succeed in this business, there's only one thing you need to be, and you have to be able to do that. And I said, what is that? And he said, you gotta be super stubborn. And and you know what? Stubborn is not necessarily the best word for that, but you gotta be so persistent and stubborn in the sense of like, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna still get up and do it. And so that's a super, super important thing. So I don't know if it's stubbornness. I think it's more persistence and belief in what you want to do and what in cinema and yourself, etc. I think that's very important. Yeah, and then you become confident and you become all of these things. But at first, you're not really like you're learning. You're like you just want to do it, and people will try to stop you, and you just have to be stubborn and continue. So there you
go. Second question is, I know we already talked about Dune, and I think everyone should see Dune. I got to see it in like the Dolby, like the nice chairs and the whole thing. Which
nice.
The movie was just because it's like the nice Dolby, over here at there's like a really nice mall over here, and it had the rumble seats. The whole film was just rumbling. The whole film was just just a roller coaster. But what's a film that you think people should see? Doesn't have to be yours. Just any film that maybe recently
right now?
Just like, yeah, just it maybe one that has cultural significance, maybe one that's just fun.
Huh. Well, I mean, that's a tricky answer. Tricky question. Sorry, tricky question. Not a tricky answer. I think I do believe that I spoke to somebody recently about Underground, which is Amir Kusturic's film from 1990 something. And I think everybody should see it because it's Amir Kusuric is a director who makes live action films feel like cartoons because their action is almost impossible. And I like he's very unique in that. So I'd love for people to see. So it's not a recent movie at all. But Dune is definitely like whoever hasn't seen Dune should see Dune because Dune is extremely special.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much for especially the added time. And I really thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. And hopefully we can have you back awesome. And talk more.
Absolutely. Thank you. You're awesome. Good, excellent questions.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F&R Mattbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.